A brave golden retriever, Max, spots a helpless puppy trapped on train tracks. Just as the train approaches, Max rushes to help. But what happens next will leave everyone in shock. Stay with me to witness a heroic act that will leave you in awe. Where are you watching from? Comment below. Let's begin. The railway tracks stretched into the distance, disappearing into the horizon. The air was still, except for the occasional chirping of birds. The sun had begun to set, casting an orange glow over the quiet town. But amidst this peaceful evening, a small, helpless figure trembled on the cold metal rails. A tiny, golden-furred puppy stood in the middle of the tracks, shivering. Its big, round eyes were filled with fear as it whimpered softly. Its tiny paws tried to move, but one of them was stuck between the wooden planks and steel rails. The poor puppy struggled, pulling with all its might, but it couldn't free itself. In the distance, the faint hum of a train echoed through the air. It was still far away, but the ground beneath the puppy vibrated slightly. The puppy let out another desperate cry, but there was no one around to help. A few people stood near a small shop by the roadside, talking and sipping tea. One of them turned his head and noticed the little puppy trapped on the tracks. His eyes widened in horror. "Oh no! There's a puppy stuck on the railway," he shouted, pointing toward the tracks. People turned to look. A woman gasped, covering her mouth with her hands. A young boy stepped forward, but his father held him back. "No, it's too dangerous," the man said, shaking his head. The train was coming closer now, its whistle piercing the air. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, something incredible happened. From a nearby alley, a golden retriever named Max appeared. His golden coat gleamed under the fading sunlight, and his eyes locked onto the struggling puppy. His ears perked up as he took in the sight before him. Without hesitation, Max started running toward the tracks. A few people noticed him and gasped. "That dog! Where is he going?" someone murmured. Max didn't slow down. His paws pounded against the pavement as he sprinted forward, his heart racing. He could hear the train's whistle growing louder, but he ignored it. His only focus was on the helpless puppy ahead. The train was now visible in the distance, its massive body rushing toward the tracks. The metal wheels screeched against the rails as it approached. Max leaped onto the tracks. The puppy turned its head, sensing the presence of another dog. Max nudged the puppy gently with his nose, assessing the situation. The puppy whimpered again, its paw still stuck. Max grabbed the puppy's scruff with his teeth and tried to pull, but the tiny creature was stuck too tightly. The train's horn blared loudly. The people watching held their breath. The train was now just moments away. Would Max be able to save the puppy in time? Or was it too late? Max's heart pounded in his chest as he tried again to pull the puppy free. His strong jaws gently gripped the tiny creature's scruff, but the puppy let out a whimper. It was still stuck. The train's deafening horn blared again, sending chills through the people watching from a distance. "Come on, boy! Get out of there!" someone shouted. The ground trembled beneath them. The rails hummed as the massive steel beast roared closer. The puppy's small body shook with fear, its wide eyes pleading for help. Max knew there was no time left. With a deep breath, Max repositioned himself. His sharp eyes scanned the puppy's trapped paw. He carefully pressed his snout against the small limb and nudged it, pushing and pulling gently. The puppy cried out but didn't resist. It trusted Max. The train was now dangerously close. The engine's powerful headlights bathed the tracks in blinding white light. The metal wheels screeched, and the driver blew the horn frantically. He had spotted the dogs, but there was no way to stop in time. People covered their eyes. Some turned away, unable to watch what seemed like an inevitable tragedy. Then, just as the train was mere seconds away, Max made one last desperate attempt. With a sudden, forceful jerk, he yanked the puppy's body sideways while nudging its trapped paw free. The tiny creature yelped but finally tumbled out of the track's grip. Max grabbed the puppy in his mouth and leaped off the tracks. just as the train thundered past. A powerful gust of wind whooshed over them, stirring dust and gravel. The ground vibrated violently, and the sheer force of the passing train nearly knocked Max off his feet. He shielded the puppy with his body, pressing it close to the ground. The people watching gasped in shock. For a moment, everything was silent except for the fading sound of the train. Then, a loud cheer erupted. "He did it!" someone cried. "The dog saved the puppy." A young woman rushed toward Max, her eyes filled with tears. "Oh my God, that was incredible," she whispered. Max, panting heavily, gently placed the trembling puppy on the ground. The little one looked up at him, eyes wide with gratitude. It licked Max's face, its tiny tail wagging weakly. But just as a moment of relief settled in, something unexpected happened. Max collapsed. The cheers turned into gasps. People ran closer, their faces filled with concern. Was Max injured? Had he been hit by the train? The celebration was suddenly replaced by fear and uncertainty. The air grew heavy with silence as Max lay still on the ground. The golden retriever who had just risked his life to save the tiny puppy was now unmoving. The young woman who had rushed toward him dropped to her knees beside him. "Max! Hey, buddy, wake up," she whispered, gently stroking his golden fur. Her fingers trembled as she felt his body rise and fall. He was still breathing, but his breaths were shallow. The little puppy, still shaking, crawled closer to Max. It whimpered and nudged him with its tiny nose, letting out soft cries as if begging him to get up. But Max didn't move. A small crowd had gathered around him. An older man stepped forward. "I saw everything," he murmured. "That dog is a hero, but he looks hurt." The woman looked up, her eyes filled with urgency. "We need to get him to a vet, now." A teenage boy, still in shock, quickly pulled out his phone. "There's a vet clinic a few blocks away," he said. "I'll call them." A man in a denim jacket bent down. "Let's lift him carefully," he suggested. Another man joined him, and together, they gently picked up Max's limp body. The golden retriever let out a faint whimper, his head resting weakly against the woman's arm. The puppy, unwilling to be separated from its rescuer, barked and tried to follow. The woman scooped up the tiny pup. "Don't worry, little one," she murmured. "We'll take care of him." They hurried toward a parked car, carefully placing Max in the back seat. The puppy nestled beside him, refusing to leave his side. As the car sped toward the clinic, the woman whispered, "Please, Max, just hold on." But deep inside, a terrifying thought gripped her heart. What if they were too late? The car sped through the streets, the tires screeching as they turned a sharp corner. The woman held Max's head gently in her lap, stroking his fur. His breathing was slow and uneven, his body limp. "Stay with me, Max," she whispered, her voice trembling. The puppy, curled up beside him, whimpered softly, nudging his face as if trying to wake him up. The teenage boy in the front seat turned around. "We're almost there. Just 2 more minutes," he said, gripping his phone tightly. He had already called the vet, and they were expecting them. The car pulled up in front of a small veterinary clinic. Before the driver could even stop completely, the woman threw open the door. "We need help," she shouted. 2 veterinary assistants rushed out with a stretcher. They carefully lifted Max, placing him on it. The puppy tried to jump onto the stretcher too, refusing to leave Max's side. "He's unconscious, but he's breathing," the woman explained urgently. The vet, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, examined Max as they rushed inside. "We'll do everything we can," he assured her. They pushed through the clinic doors and into an examination room. The woman and the others stood outside, peering through the glass window, their hearts pounding. The little puppy pressed its nose against the glass, letting out soft, worried whimpers. Inside, the vet quickly checked Max's heartbeat and gently pressed along his ribs. A nurse injected something into his leg. The vet frowned, his face serious. "This dog has been through a huge shock," he murmured. "His heart is under stress, and he's exhausted." The woman placed her hands over her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. "He's going to be okay, right?" she whispered. The vet sighed. "We need to keep him under observation. He's a strong dog, but we won't know for sure until the next few hours." The words felt like a knife in her chest. The room was silent, except for the faint beeping of a monitor. Suddenly, Max let out a weak, shaky breath. His tail twitched slightly. The vet leaned closer. Then, Max's eyes fluttered open. The little puppy let out an excited bark, its tiny tail wagging furiously. The woman gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "He's waking up." But just as relief washed over them, the vet's face remained serious. "He's not out of danger yet," he said. "Now we wait. Would Max truly recover, or was this only temporary?" The room was tense with anticipation. Max's eyes were open, but they were tired and unfocused. The vet carefully checked his heartbeat, his fingers pressing gently against the golden retriever's chest. The woman leaned forward, barely breathing. "Is he going to make it?" she whispered. The vet didn't answer immediately. Instead, he placed a comforting hand on Max's head. "He's weak, but he's fighting," he finally said. "His heart is still under strain, but if he rests, he has a good chance of recovering." The tiny puppy let out a sharp bark, wagging its tail as if encouraging Max to hold on. The golden retriever's ears twitched slightly at the sound. Then, with a shaky effort, he slowly lifted his head and licked the puppy's face. Tears streamed down the woman's cheeks. "You did it, Max," she whispered. "You saved him." The vet smiled for the first time. "He's a fighter. He just needs time." The news spread quickly, and soon, people who had witnessed the rescue arrived at the clinic. A small crowd gathered outside, eager for updates on the brave golden retriever who had risked his life to save a helpless puppy. A news reporter even showed up, asking for interviews. "The world needs to hear about this incredible act of bravery," he said. The next morning, Max was still weak but much better. He could sit up, his tail thumping weakly against the soft bedding. The puppy never left his side, curling up next to him, as if protecting him now. The vet finally gave the news everyone had been waiting for. Max is going to be okay. Cheers erupted in the clinic. Strangers clapped, some even hugging each other in relief. The woman knelt beside Max, scratching behind his ears. "You're a hero," she whispered, "and heroes deserve a happy ending." The little puppy barked in agreement. That day, Max not only saved a life, he became a symbol of courage and kindness. And from that moment on, the puppy never left his side. Max had gained more than just admiration. He had gained a best friend. Thanks for watching this story. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an incredible story like this. Your support keeps us bringing more real-life emotional stories.